I'm Brian Graf, and I approve this message.
We just hit our 1-year anniversary of VMware Cloud on AWS back in August. In that time, we've had 14 releases. How many of our customers have had to do any of those patching or upgrades? 0. So one of the great things about this is because we're offering this as a service, all of a sudden you don't have to spend your nights and weekends doing these upgrades. Okay? We take care of all of that for you. We add in an extra host, we do all the patching and upgrades, and then we take that host out, and that doesn't cost you anything else. But you still get your nights and weekends back. We're at 99.99% uptime. All these different things that you see is showing that VMware Cloud on AWS is not just VMware going and putting vSphere in the cloud and calling ourselves a cloud company. We could have done that. We could have put our vCenter out there and said, all right, vCenter is now running on AWS. We're a cloud company. Go us. Okay? But we didn't, and I'm going to go through some of the different features that we've added that is only for cloud that will benefit you. But one of the things I want to point out here is, A, the rate at which we are doing things in the cloud. The second one is, we talked about it takes about 7 to 9 months to get new hosts. In the cloud, it takes 12 minutes to add a host in and have that storage and everything configured and ready to go. Okay? We're in 9 different regions, and Pat Gelsinger laid out all the regions that we'll be in through at the end of 2019, and it's basically every region in the world. Okay? So, what exactly is VMware Cloud on AWS? What we have here, just break this down, especially for those in the back. On the left-hand side here, this is your on-prem data center. Okay? This is where you have to care about everything, from power to networking to the type of compute that you have. Everything here is in your domain. You have to take care of that. On the right-hand side is your cloud. Any AWS resources that you use, EC2, RDS for databases, excuse me. And in the middle is VMware Cloud on AWS. And what you see there is that we run on AWS's infrastructure. We deploy on bare metal hosts, so you get the full host. Depending on which service you use, you might get NVMe storage local to those hosts, or there's another thing that we have just announced that is on bare metal hosts, R5 metal, which don't have any local disk, but that leverage EBS. And they run vSAN on EBS storage, which allows you to scale up to, I think we go up to 35 or 50 terabytes per host right now in the cloud. We manage all of this for you. So we actually have chat, and I'll show you this, it's pretty cool. If you have a problem, we use Intercom. There's a button not only in VMware Cloud on AWS, but within the vSphere client. The H5 client has Intercom built in. So you click a button and you're directly working with GSS. So no more, waiting 2 or 3 days for GSS to answer your emails. You have instant support. Now, one of the cool things that we have here, which I was talking about previously, is because the VMware side of this is sitting on the AWS global infrastructure, we have direct access to a number of their services. Now, for those of you who don't know much about AWS and their services, they have something called an Elastic Network Interface, or an ENI. We'll call it an ENI for short. That Elastic Network Interface ties directly into those hosts and allows us to pretty much backdoor into services that we need within AWS without going across the internet or the WAN. And doing that also means that any egress charges that you would normally have coming out of AWS to, for example, an on-prem data center are gone. You don't have any egress charges. So what that means for you is, let's say that you're a heavy user of S3. Okay? For those of you that don't know what S3 is, it's a storage service, it's super cheap, and then if you pull anything out, the egress charges like 10 or 15 cents per gig. Okay? And that can add up over time. If you're dumping all of your VM backups into S3, that's great and that's super cheap until you have to restore. Okay? Now, if we do that with VMware Cloud on AWS, pulling any of those backups back out leverages the ENI, and it's a high bandwidth, low latency connection. That means that I can pull everything out of S3 at 0 charge into VMware Cloud on AWS. So all of a sudden, our customers are thinking, how can we start leveraging some of these AWS services with my applications in the VMware stack to get the best of both worlds and at a lower cost? Make sense? Am I speaking too fast? You guys understand my accent, right? You watch enough Hollywood videos? Okay. All right. So as we talked with customers and as we started going down this path, we started talking with our customers about why would you use this? What good is VMware Cloud on AWS for you? And after we pooled together all those answers, it came back to 3 or 4 main reasons that I have up here on the board. The first one is a data center extension. So for those customers that have a data center or data center space or colo, and they need to continue to grow, but they either don't want to build a new data center or their contract only allows them to have a certain amount of space, but they continue to grow from an IT perspective, they need somewhere to go. That's either another colo or something like this, all right? The next one is disaster recovery. If I don't have to own all my hardware for a DR site, I don't want to do that. And one of the features we'll talk about here is called Elastic DRS. In a nutshell, Elastic DRS allows you to start with the minimum number of hosts within your cluster, and then it will automatically scale for you and add resources from AWS if you pass specific thresholds that you set. Meaning, I can maybe run, say, a 2-node or a 3-node cluster and say, if my memory utilization goes above 80%, automatically bring in another host into my cluster. That way, I'm only paying for it when I need it, and if I don't need it, let's kick it back out. So at the same time, if I drop below a certain threshold, kick out that extra host so I'm not paying for it. So it's very dynamic. So a lot of our customers are very excited about the DR perspective because it costs a lot less for them. Cloud migrations. We have a lot of people are saying, I need to get to the cloud. My management says we need to be a cloud-first company. They don't understand cloud, but they like the buzzword, so we're going to the cloud. All right? Now, for those people, they said, I need a way to get up there, and I can convert all of my VMs to AMIs, or EC2 instances, or Hyper, whatever you want to call it, Hyper-V, or Azure, or IBM Cloud, or whatever cloud's out there. They can do that, but all of a sudden you lose that benefit of being able to, minus IBM Cloud because they're still running vSphere, but you don't keep the same setup. It's no longer VMDK at that point. And at that point, you don't have an easy way of bringing that back out or migrating to another cloud. And the next one there are just the next generation apps, okay? How do I go ahead and continue to use vSphere, but at the same time, use some of these other things that I see, AI, ML, containers, Kubernetes, you name it. And we're able to do a lot of that on-prem, but a lot of customers are saying, you know what? We started using these types of workloads in the cloud. Okay, we maybe started learning Kubernetes in the cloud, so we're going to keep that there, but we want to continue using your software. So those are the 4 use cases that we saw. Now, how does this work? Currently in on-prem environments, you're spending a certain amount every year, every couple of years on our program and our products. Here you can do this in an on-demand model, just like you can any other cloud. So if you want to go out today and swipe your credit card, which I actually did last week for a demo, I pulled out my credit card, I swiped it, and I deployed an SDDC in about 90 minutes. Okay? You can do that. You can spin it up and try it for a day or a week or a month and spin it back down, and you're only billed for the time that you're running it. At the same time, you can do this in a 1-year reserved or a 3-year reserved model where you save more money because we give you a bigger discount when you choose to stay with us longer, right? Like any other cloud. And basically, we're moving this into a cloud-like platform, so you're going to see it act more like cloud as well. So at VMworld US, we talked about this, and this actually surprised everyone because VMware as a whole, normally we don't give out roadmap more than like 1 quarter ahead. And Pat Gelsinger got up on stage and posted this slide. And I remember I was sitting down in the audience and I looked up and I did a double take. I looked up, went back to my computer, and I looked up with big eyes and I said, he just laid out our roadmap here for 1.5 years as far as where we're going to be and when. So as you can see here on the dots on the right-hand side all over the map, we're planning on being in pretty much every region in the world in 1.5 years, which means for any of you that are running in global companies that have data centers around the world, this is going to be an option, a viable option for you to run VMware in every single region without having to run your own data centers. So let's get into some of the nitty-gritty, okay? I talked a little bit about what this is, but let's talk about things in a deeper way. Okay, so right now, vSphere, you're using either the Flex client or the H5 client. And if you have multiple different environments that are not on the same SSO domain, you have to have multiple tabs, right? Every vCenter has its own tab. We realize that that's not ideal, and a lot of customers want to be able to see everything in a single pane of glass or within one client. So with VMware Cloud on AWS, we have what's called hybrid linked mode, which you can also use this hybrid cloud gateway. And what that does is it allows you to tie two different SSO domains together. It allows you to use the SSO domain of VMware Cloud on AWS with your on-prem accounts and log in to either one using the same credentials. So all of a sudden, just like you can with enhanced link mode for vCenters that are in the same SSO domain, I can see everything, and that's a terrible screenshot on the screen. As you can see by the little smudge here and this little smudge here, we have two different vCenters, okay? You can see them all from the same client. The one on the top is our VMware Cloud on AWS. The one on the bottom is our on-prem environment. I can right-click in there on virtual machines and migrate them, cold migration or vMotion, between on-prem and cloud and on-prem, okay? So because this is a cloud environment, there's a few things that change. All right, as you can see here, we have a different kind of access model for the service where the customer has access to the virtual machines. You have read-only access into vCenter and the hosts, but you don't actually have access to do anything to the hosts. So the idea here is that you spin up an environment, you move your data center up there, and one of you guys accidentally deletes your vCenter, your host, right? We don't want that to be a problem, and since we're the ones doing the updates, we said, all right, we're going to manage the hardware, the cluster, we're going to manage everything on the AWS side with them, and we're going to give you this as a service. Meaning, when you're spinning up anything else on Amazon, you don't have to deal with the hosts underneath your EC2 instances, you don't have to deal with the database applications that your databases are running on. We do the same thing here. So you can see it, you can log into it, you just can't change anything for the managed virtual machines. Okay, so vCenter, SRM, NSX, all of that we take care of. You can see it, you can click on it, you can hit it with Power CLI, you just can't change anything. All right, so we talked a little bit about being able to increase or add a host in about 12 minutes. Now that's being super conservative. Normally I get it between 6 and 10 minutes, but you can take a single cluster from 2 hosts or 3 hosts, I should say 3 hosts. You can take it from 3 hosts to 16 hosts in a matter of about 40 minutes, okay? You can spin it back down when you want. We can go up to 32 hosts per cluster, 10 clusters per SDDC. So in any given SDDC at this point, you have 320 hosts capabilities. Now this is really cool. We had someone talk about the German failover. Who was that? Yeah, okay. So German failover, we have stretched clusters, we have replication between sites. One of the things that we wanted to do, and also to increase uptime, was say, in an on-prem environment, your data center, in general, is a single failover domain. Your hosts go down, your site goes down, your data's gone, or inaccessible until it comes back up. Now you may have a stretched cluster, which is great on-prem, but nobody's really done this in the cloud yet for an entire environment. So what we did is we went ahead with vSAN, NSX, and vSphere, and we made it so that you can actually have a replication between availability zones. Meaning, within a single region, AWS has multiple little data centers within a certain distance from one another. And out of those different data centers or availability zones, we can stretch your environment to where you have the same number of hosts in both data centers and your data replicated across those. So if a single AZ goes down at Amazon, all of your workloads can continue to run. Go ahead, Russell.
You're stretching layer 2 across there, so I don't have to re-IP, because like with Amazon, each high availability zone means different IP addresses. Are you stretching layer 2?
We are stretching layer 2. There's no re-IPing, there is nothing else has to happen, and that's one of the benefits of using NSX here, right? Because we use NSX, and that's the same thing, I'll take a step back. When I say that you can vMotion to the cloud, it's because of NSX. You do not have to have NSX on-prem to do this. You can download the free NSX Edge appliance and use that on-prem to set up the layer 2 stretch. But once you have the layer 2 stretch up, you do not have to re-IP anything. So in this instance, we all of a sudden have 4 nines of uptime for your vSphere environment in the cloud, to where if an AZ goes down, which rarely happens with Amazon, but just in case, if your workloads are that critical, you have replication set up here and that uptime. Any other questions so far? Okay. Yes, go ahead. Talk loud.
The stretch cluster example was between availability zones within AWS. Is there also a possibility of doing on-prem to AWS such cluster?
So that's a great question. We currently don't have plans to do that, and the short answer being, with this, it's a highly controlled environment, and we know the types of latencies that we're going to get here. With customers even trying to do direct connect between on-prem and VMware Cloud on AWS for vMotion and SRM, we see such a wide variety of latencies and all sorts of things, speeds, that we just can't. We could probably do it, but there wouldn't be an easy way to support that. So, great question. All right, this one is near and dear to my heart because at VMware for about 1.5 years, I was the product manager for DRS, HA, and all of resource management. So for the vSphere 6.5, how many of you guys have 6.5 or 6.7? Okay, cool. I was able to work on DRS and HA and orchestrated restart and a number of different things there that I was really excited about. During that time, we worked on this thing called compute policy. And in a nutshell, so I don't blow your minds too much, what we wanted to do is say, when we put a workload into vSphere, and you use, for example, an affinity rule. How many of you guys have put together or used affinity rules? Okay, they're very static. Now, if you add another host into the cluster, how many of you remember to go in and update your affinity rules? You're a liar. Okay, so it's hard because it's static and it's not something you normally think about. The idea here is that your workloads are dynamic, and if we can let vSphere or any of the features within vSphere or the VMware products understand the context of the workload, it should just be able to do all this itself. So what we're pretty much doing is we're saying we're going to make a way or a brain within vSphere that allows you to actually tag workloads and give them context for the environment. So let's say down the road, now this part isn't in compute policy, but let's just say, and this makes it kind of easier to understand, that I want to make sure that at any given time I only have 7, let's say 5 Windows machines on each ESX host. Maybe my licensing only allows me to have a certain number of Windows OSs per host. I could tag that into compute policy, so compute policy would know if I add another VM that I can see as a Windows OS, it will start load balancing my Windows workloads across all the hosts in that cluster. If I added another host, it automatically updates my compute policy, so I never have to touch it again through the lifetime of that VM. Pretty cool? Okay, so we're doing that kind of thing, and this is kind of the first part of that with VMware Cloud on AWS. So we're able to start setting up these policies. First, we're starting off with VM host affinity. Anti-affinity, and then being able to disable DRS. So for any workloads that you put up there, if you say, hey, I don't want any of these workloads to ever vMotion, maybe it's because of performance, licensing, or whatever other reasons, you can go in there and compute policy. With that, you can actually set this up to where you don't need to ever touch these again or worry about that issue that you've designed for here. Now, another one that we hear a lot is we have some competitors with certain products that cost a lot of money per core, and so a lot of you have custom clusters on-prem that you license just for those workloads, right? Generally, a certain kind of database rhymes with Oracle, and in those instances, it costs a lot of money per core to license. Now, these hosts that we've got here, some of them have 96 cores per host. Do the math. Okay, I need a calculator. But it's going to cost millions of dollars for me to license. So one of the things that we've done is we have a lot of customers that have come to us and said, we want to put certain workloads in VMware Cloud on AWS but it's just going to be too cost prohibitive. So for those customers, we have a way that we can go ahead and say, when you deploy your SDDC, we actually will turn off the cores at the BIOS layer or level before it even powers on for you. So you're able to leverage all of this, leverage the integrations with AWS services, but you only have to pay for the cores that you actually have turned on and are using. And that actually works with their EULAs. We talked about Elastic DRS. This is just a preview. But basically what you say here is you say, what's my minimum cluster size, my maximum cluster size, and you can go in and say, you know, I'm willing to pay this much if I need to scale. And then I can choose kind of my thresholds, right? Someone did some cool animations that probably took them a few days to do that. Whoa, okay. It wasn't me. And then the other thing, like I said, so if you pay for this by the hour, and you decide you want to spin this up sometime, and then you spin it down or delete it because you don't want to keep paying for it, it would be really nice if the next time you go to spin up an SDDC, if you could just kind of almost pick up where you left off, as far as the firewall rules you created, or NAT rules, or custom sizing, IP addressing. So actually, when you deploy or delete an SDDC, you actually have the ability to go in and save kind of the configuration of that and reuse that the next time you deploy. So all of a sudden, we see that infrastructure is not the problem anymore. Okay? Infrastructure is not a problem. It's you pay for it, you get it when you need it. Now it comes into how much can I configure and how much can I automate. Okay? And so we're going to jump through a little bit of this really quick. All right. Oh, we'll stop right there. Okay. So how does some of this look? Now, on-prem, you have your virtual environments, you've got your distributed switches, and in there you're running your environment and everything's great. Things get a little more complicated when you do this from a VMware Cloud perspective if you just are trying to understand it. It's very simple from the UI, but if I want to start leveraging things over here, my routers or my traffic can go one of two ways in VMware Cloud on AWS. One is through the internet gateway out to anywhere else in the world. The other one is through that ENI, and the router will take care of that. But as you can see here, we have a little ENI icon in VMware Cloud on AWS. We have our distributed logical routers and VMs with their VNI IDs. Now, once traffic from these virtual machines comes to the logical router and then comes to the gateway, depending on what you set up, you can tell it to come across the ENI into the AWS services and talk directly to those. Now, one of the really cool things about that is there's a demo that I normally do. I don't have internet or this set up right now, but I will in my Thursday morning session if any of you are at VMworld, where I have a database running over here and it's not publicly accessible. So it actually states publicly accessible false. And you can't reach it from outside of that VPC. For those of you not up to date on AWS terms, VPC, Virtual Private Cloud, think of it as a VApp on steroids, but it's essentially a container construct that allows you to throw things into it. Okay, so I've got a database over here that is not publicly accessible, but all of my virtual machines on this subnet right here can talk to it. Okay, so all of a sudden I have applications running on the VMware side that don't have a database over there. They're leveraging a database over here. The snapshots are being taken automatically, updates are happening automatically, and if I choose to spin it down or replicate it, I can do all that very easily via APIs or through the UI. Russell?
What do the root tables look like? That I mean, is this updating the root tables in the VPC, or
yes.
Are those horribly long routes?
Great question. So Russell's question was, does what I was talking about update the route table, the root tables within the VPC? And the answer is yes, it does update that. And the cool thing about it is, let's say that my VPC is 192.168.x.x. Okay, so over here it's running 192.168. Over here, let's say I'm running 172.16. Whatever. I can just put 172.16. Whatever my subnet is into the route table here, and it will automatically know how to route through the ENI. So we do a lot on the back end. We actually have a lot of services running around your VMware Cloud on AWS environment. Even though you see your vCenter and your VMs, we have a bunch of other applications for monitoring, administration, updates, upgrades, and other things running all around this that make this stuff possible. So if I add a new logical router or logical switch into my VMware Cloud on AWS environment, and I put in the subnet when I'm creating that, it automatically updates the route table over here to be able to communicate with that, which is really nice. It takes a lot of the complexities away from the networking. And we're going to jump through some of this just because of time. Any other questions so far? All right. So I'm going to leave a lot of this as a teaser. So with a lot of the VMUG user cons that I do, we actually only do about 3 slides, and then we go directly into it, live, and into an environment and do a bunch of stuff. Since I'm doing that here at VMworld, I wanted to kind of save that so that any of you that are going over there to the conference, you'll be more incentivized to come to my session and see us actually use it live. All right, so one of the big things that I talked about before is charges. So VMware runs all this for you, even the AWS side. Now, as a service, you get ESX, vSphere, vCenter, vSAN, and I don't know if I said NSX, all bundled together with the AWS hardware. All of that with support and upgrades and maintenance is charged to you by VMware, 1 bill per month. If you decide to use any other AWS services, that's going to come from, or those are going to be billed to you just like they currently are right now. So when I deploy an SDDC, I actually get to connect this to an AWS account of mine that I'm running, my company's workloads on, and connect to a specific VPC. And that VPC is the one that I can actually leverage those cool services across between the VMware stack and AWS services. When I do that, okay, that main bill for VMware Cloud on AWS is still going to come to me the same way that I sign up for VMware Cloud on AWS. But any sort of egress charges, so as you can see over here, any cross-AZ data charges, any egress charges, all of those are going to come to you directly, like your AWS services that you're already using. So basically you get the VMware Cloud on AWS, and that's billed to you, but any other integrations that you choose to do, you're going to get billed the same way that you currently do, and if your company has specific rates already agreed to with Amazon, you're going to continue to get those rates for what you're doing. Okay. Now, we talked a little bit about what VMware Cloud on AWS is, and I want to take you guys now through, and I want you to think about this. Our customers like to talk about what's next. Okay. So currently you have an on-prem environment. Now, let's say that you spin up VMware Cloud on AWS, and you're like, okay, this is really cool. I just deployed an entire SDDC in 90 minutes. Okay, that's neat. I went and grabbed a cup of coffee and some lunch, and I came back and it's done. What's next? Okay, the next point is filling up that SDDC. Okay, so I've got 2 different ways I can do that. One, I can upload my ISOs and just start creating new, fresh VMs, which is a pain. I could leverage content library, doing pretty much the same thing, or I can start migrating my workloads from on-prem up. So we have this cool thing called HCX that allows you to do these migrations. Now there's a few different ways that you can do this, but what it allows you to do is it allows you to do vMotions, cold migrations, or replicated assisted vMotions up into the cloud in bulk. And what this will allow you to do is HCX itself has the ability to do compression, IPsec VPNs, layer 2 VPNs, and a whole bunch of other things, but it allows you to then grab whatever virtual machines that you want and start pushing them up to the cloud. Now you can have it to where it replicates all that up and is ready for you to pretty much hit the accept button and flip the bits over. So you can have this replicating for a week or 2 weeks or a month, whatever you need, and then during your maintenance window you can click accept and just essentially push all those VMs over with the final bits and have them running up in the cloud. This is the easiest way that we've seen people evac data centers. So, for example, we had one customer that migrated over 2,000 virtual machines, over 300 terabytes of virtual machines and storage in the matter of about 3 weeks, and they had 0 downtime. 0 VMs stopped working. So they were able to evacuate one of their colos. That they came to us and they're like, we need X, Y, and Z. I'm not going to get into the details on that. And we're like, we're not quite ready yet. And they're like, well, here's the deal. We have to be out of our data center in 6 months. And we're like, okay, just bear with us, okay? About a month later, we were ready with some of this, the appropriate stuff for their request. And they did all this in 3 weeks. What normally would take a year to a year and a half of planning, preparation, execution, they did in 3 weeks with 0 downtime. So HCX is really a neat piece of technology. All right, so when you get into storage discussions, one of the things that people ask about is, how can I keep my storage safe? Within AWS, their data centers are highly secure, so even getting into those would be very difficult for people to do. And they automatically have a type of encryption, their KMS that they use when they deploy hosts, rotate out the keys every so often. Okay, so it's not like one static key sits there. We've added an additional layer on top of that, allowing vSAN encryption using AWS's KMS service. So not only do you have encryption, at the physical level of the host, if someone were to go yank your drives, which I don't see how that would happen, but as well, you have the data at rest encryption with vSAN, and that ties directly in with AWS services. Now, we talked about this a little bit. Now, what's really cool is you're going to start seeing, how many of you listen to the VMworld announcements in the US? Anyone? How many of you heard about RDS on-prem? Okay. So what you're going to start seeing is a lot more integrations with AWS services, and I'm thrilled about this. Obviously, we're still competitors to some degree, but what you're going to see, and what I've been able to see firsthand over the last 2.5 years, is working with AWS has been amazing. Their engineering teams are amazing. They work really well with all of us. And so as we continue to do things like this, which is doing vSAN on EBS, which is an impressive feat in and of itself, then we start doing things like relational database services as a service, but on-prem. Okay, being able to bring some of AWS services into a vSphere environment. You're going to start seeing a lot more of that as we go. And the nice thing about this, going back to one of the reasons for VMware Cloud on AWS, is we're used to this part, right? We've all been doing vSphere for years, most of us. So changing to learn a new cloud or learn a new set of APIs or have to take all my scripts that I have in a repository and update those for another cloud or 2 or 3 clouds is quite difficult and time consuming. Here, we're able to continue to use all of our same scripts, APIs, UI knowledge, tribal knowledge, all of that as we have before. Okay, there's really no update there. We can take it a step further in our personal careers if we want to talk about career advancement and continue to build upon that, learning AWS at our own speed. And then as you do that, you're going to be able to integrate more and more with the AWS services. So this one's kind of cool. We have currently a 3-node minimum cluster for VMware Cloud on AWS. So if you want to, you can go out and spin it up at hourly. It's about $8.5 per hour per host. So you're talking about $24 an hour to run a 3-node SDDC. And we realize that that's a little cost prohibitive, especially if you're wanting to just kind of learn this. So what we've done is we said, we're creating a single node SDDC. There's not the resiliency of multiple hosts, but this is a way for you to get your hands on it, play with it, see if you like it, take it to your boss, talk about however you want to potentially implement that in your company. And then from there, there's a button that you can click on that allows you to actually expand that to a 4-node and start using it for real. Okay? So for those of you who are interested, you can go up to VMware Cloud on AWS on the internet and click try single node. Okay? I think right now there's a deal for it's like $5 an hour or $5.50 an hour total, where you can use that and it costs that much as long as you're running it. You can do it for up to 30 days. At the end of the 30 days, it'll delete itself. So the idea here is don't run your production workloads on this unless you have backups, and even then, just realize that at the end of the 30 days, that this will go away. And there's a countdown in the UI for you as well. But that way you can go in, you can spin the tires. I have a eval guide that's up on the internet, and I can tweet out that link again and send it out to VMUG. Russell, we can pass it around if people are interested in trying this, and it will actually let you go through and do a bunch of the integrations demos that I do, like load balancers with VMs, RDS databases with VMs, EC2 with VMs, and it allows you to walk through all that very quickly. All right, the last thing I'll talk about here really quick before we get to some other questions are some of the different ways that this continues to evolve and be more cloud-like. If you haven't noticed already, we have other products that have been going from your packaged software up to cloud. Okay, so we have things like NSX Cloud, we have Log Intelligence, we just bought Cloud Health. You can kind of start seeing the shift that VMware is part of, right? We're moving towards as a service. We have our VMware Cloud Services team, and they paid me like $5 on Venmo to put in this slide to show you guys. But essentially what you're going to start seeing is you're going to start seeing a lot more cloud-based VMware products. And all these we're striving to have all these work really, really well together. Just like VMware Cloud on AWS, where we have our update frequency is much faster than an on-prem release. Right now we're running vSphere 6.8 in VMware Cloud on AWS, which is kind of cool. Someone put out a tweet a day or two ago saying, which version of vSphere are you on? And there were like 4 options. And I wrote down, being a smart aleck, 6.8, smiley face. When you're running in the cloud, you get the best of everything when it first comes out. And some of those features will never make it on-prem. Okay? Some of them will, as they slip into the on-prem cycle. But what you're going to start seeing is all the greatest features and capabilities for you you're going to find in the as-a-service product. So, we're going to skip the architecture. This is one thing that we announced today at like 7 this morning, so you guys are going to be the first VMUG to hear about this. One of the really cool features within VMware Cloud on AWS, like I said, was Intercom Support. Now, when you click on the little Intercom button in the bottom right-hand corner of VMware Cloud on AWS, originally it was just Intercom. You could type in a question and support would get back to you. We've now done a few extra things here, like intelligent search. So depending on which page within the vSphere client you're in, like if I'm working in networking, all of a sudden when I open up support, the questions on the side are going to be tailored to whatever page you're on. As you start typing, it's going to be linking to KB articles and other things associated with the networking. So all of a sudden, you're not having to Google through different issues that you're having. You can do it straight from that page. You can still chat with support there. You can see all of your support requests if you have SRs. And there's a quick button to see the service health. Now, does this sound like we just threw vSphere in the cloud? Okay. We've spent a lot of time working on this to make this groundbreaking and to be able to help customers not only move and transition into the cloud easily, like management wants them to do, and the way that IT as a whole is going. We've not only made it easy for you to forecast or not need to forecast, we've made it easy for you to be able to move your workloads to another cloud. Now, what I see in my head, looking out, say 5 years from now, is that most customers, and as customers right now are realizing that multi-cloud and hybrid cloud are important, I can see customers saying, you know what, it's going to be cheaper for the next 4 months for us to run these workloads in Cloud X. Let's migrate them there. And they do a vMotion, or replicated assisted vMotion. And then they say, you know what, for the next 6 months or the next 1 month, it actually makes sense for us to bring these back on-prem because of how much we're going to use them. And then push them up into VMware Cloud on AWS or into IBM Cloud. And you can start seeing that your workload mobility is really a key factor in cost. And when you start looking at all this, you say, can I automate this? Can I continue to use the same services and same abilities across clouds? And VMware is the only one that can make that happen at this stage. because of that consistency. And with that, I will open that up for any questions. Do you guys like it? Do you guys think that was kind of cool?